And I actually don't care how many children you have. Each child and the assignment that's on their life is different than the next. And I think as a parent, your commitment to die every day, to give life, or I would just say direction to the soul that God put you over, is something that an unselfish person has to do. In hindsight, I wouldn't change it for the world. And it's funny because I, by no circumstances, wanted any children.
Hello, guys. Hello. Welcome back to Life's Deceit with me, your girl, Jen Simpson. Guys, it is the new year. I'm so excited to be with you guys today. We have life. We are in 2025. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. I swear, I look back and I'm like, I could have sworn I just graduated high school last year. Yeah, right. No, that was quite a few years ago. But I can't believe it. Do you guys remember when it was? I think it was 2000 and don't quote me, but I would want to say 2017 when it was about to hit New Year's and everyone was like, oh my gosh, God's coming. And people were buying up groceries, buying food, doing the most to prepare for God's coming. Do you remember that? Well, for me, it feels like it was just yesterday. And I'm like, how old am I? I can't remember how old I am. I'm forgetting how old I am. I'm forgetting what time I'm in. I'm pretty sure the other day at work, I wrote 2024 on a document. But anyways, we are here. We are blessed. We are in a new season, alive, in good health. We have another chance to do things differently, refreshed, renewed. I feel refined. So welcome to 2025. And guys, I am ecstatic. I'm excited about this new season, where the podcast is going, and me just diving more in and taking a plunge at life, doing things more with fear, and that's okay. With the fear, without the fear, I'm going to do it. And I want you guys to be on this journey with me. Continue to be on this journey with me. But before we continue into this video, guys, please hit the subscribe button. Click the link to follow my WhatsApp page that we have now, WhatsApp group, sorry. Follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is down below. Leave me a comment. Tell me about your year so far. How has it been going? Any exciting news? Need a prayer request? Because trust me, I've been on my knees praying for so many things that we're going to get into. We're going to talk about soon. But I'm excited and ecstatic because I have my first guest of 2025. Her name is Tye Threats. Guys, listen to that, Tye Threats. I had to say, is it Tye Threats or Tye Threats? No, she's Tye Threats. She's an empowering CEO and founder of WTV, which is a consulting group specializing in business transformation through strategic growth and technology solutions. With over 22 years of experience in the corporate world, she decided to start her own business in 2023. And, Tye has really earned her recognition and her expertise as the business guru. She will have your business in tip-top shape. She's passionate about uplifting others, especially women. She serves as a mentor, speaker, and author, inspiring the next generation of mentors to forego their own path. Guys, I was excited about connecting with Tye. Her story, her passion, her drive from being a teenage mom to a successful CEO of her own consulting company. It really spoke to me because this season we're talking about breaking generational cycles. And one of the generational cycles that we're stuck in is that once, a young girl has a child and a teen, that she's a complete write-off and she's not going to amount to anything. But Tye Threats is here to break that generational cycle with me and prove you guys wrong. People tend to transfer their own fears onto other people and their own beliefs. But Today we are going to undo those beliefs. If you are a teen mom, or or you were a teen mom, and you're going through your own stages where you're still going through the process, you're still processing it all. You went through, but for some reason it's still bothering you that you were a teen mom and you feel like it affected your purpose in life, your path in life. I want you to know that everything happens for a reason, regardless of what people told you. That was your reason. That was your season. You were a teen mom for a reason. There's a CEO in you. There's probably a business owner in you. There's so many things in you that I don't believe that anybody can see but you. And you got to take a leap of faith. And you got to believe in yourself, and you got to trust in your abilities, and don't let a situation determine who you are called to be. So, guys, without further ado, let's welcome Tye Threats.
Hi, how are
I'm
you?
good. How are you?
Doing great.
How was your
I was
day?
It was good. It was a busy day. I was exhausted. I was like, "Okay, just take a moment to relax and then come back." And I think, I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna get ready," and then all of a sudden, I kind of fell a little bit behind, but it was good. It's the year is starting off good, and I'm just, going
I
along.
know, 2025. Can you believe it?
No.
I swear I can. I'm like, I swear it was 2007 the other day.
Oh my goodness. In
Like, time is
2000
moving.
Yeah, so, like, 2007 is so specific because my son was born in 2007, and he is graduating this year, and I'm just like, "How did we get here so fast?"
I don't know. I'm still wondering, how did we get here so fast?
Yes.
But you know what? Everyone's like, oh my gosh, 2025. I got work to do. I'm getting older. But I'm like, we're missing the bigger picture, the
Yeah.
blessing of being able to be alive
This
and
is so true.
aging like fine wine, and still and still have opportunity to do things different. It's a
Yeah,
blessing.
it
You
is.
know, before I used to be like, oh my God, I'm getting old. But now I'm like, thank God I'm getting older. Like, I've had friends that have passed away, their children have passed away. And I'm like, just thank you for life. Honestly,
Amen.
I think
It's
now
so
when we wake
true.
up and we say thank you, God, for life, it's a completely different meaning.
Yeah. It's true, but it is so true. Perspective, 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 and, it's just so many things in life starts to have, like, layered meanings later on, and, I was telling someone, growing up, in church or just listening to songs, you hear them say, like, "Oh, he kept me when I didn't wanna be kept," and I'm like, "Yeah, last year was the first time," I'm like, "I actually know what that means." It's not just a saying, I actually know what it mean now, and so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's something.
I think with experience, and as life continues to move and happen, the things that we used to listen to when we were younger, we're like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah,
Oh, he taught
yeah.
me how. Okay, I get it, God. You taught
Yes,
me how to do some things that I didn't know I needed teaching. You taught me
yes,
patience. You taught me grace for my own self. Lord. And the list goes on, eh?
yes, it does, I'm like, "Talk about grace is sufficient." No, I understand that now.
Girl, it's so funny. Someone called me today at work, and the person said to me, I don't know what's happening.
Mhm.
I'm emotional. I don't know what it is.
Mm.
I feel a little bit depressed. I'm not happy where I am. I never knew that this would be happening to me. And I'm like,
Yeah,
you're changing internally. The work is happening on the inside. It feels like depression, but actually it's work. It's like transformation.
yeah, that's good. That's
Yes.
good.
Life is beautiful.
It is, yeah, that is awesome. So many deep conversations and just meanings out of it, or just I don't know, I think for me, like, even as I took that deep breath, I remember our women's conference last year, the theme was unhurried, and last year I turned 41, but it was my first, stepping into my 40s,
Yeah.
and before I had my birthday at the end of the year, I remember as soon as I turned 40, I was like, I don't wanna wait until I'm, like, old in, like, my 70s or 80s to have this, like, seasoned, I don't care what life throws my way, like, I just know that I know that I know. Because if you've ever seen some people, even during the pandemic, some of the elders were not bothered. They're just kinda like, "Oh," like, as if they lived through it, like, and boy, do I tell you, like, just that whole learning of, like, being in the moment, not being hurried, allowing God to take the lead and do his thing and understand what our roles are, like, we're just the vessel. This whole rush, gotta figure out we're the ones that gotta do, and it's like, ooh, surrenderance just brings about a different type of peace and just, and I really wanted to experience that. I was like, I just don't wanna wait until I am, that seasoned in life to know what it's like to just rest in him
Oh, girl.
and be careful what you ask for because God is like, "Oh, you really wanna know?"
All last year I said this. I said to myself, be careful what you asked for. Because everything you ask for, he's going to give it to you. Not the way you want it. But when he gives it to you, you're going to be like, oh God, I know I
Yeah.
asked for it, but I didn't know you're going to give it to me like this.
Yes. I
There's
agree.
stages. It's like a child. When you ask for, okay, you want a car? All right. You got to study the book. You got to go to
Yes.
driving school. It's a whole,
All of those things.
our father has to let
They're
us go
true.
through the whole process.
It had gotten to a point where I was like, "You know what? Imma be careful about what I, start repeating and saying because, again, going back to that church, we're just so, the call and respond, and they're like, "Oh, our word this year is unshakable, and we wanna just make sure that we're just not shaken by anything that happens." We're like, "Yeah, yeah, I wanna be that." And then God's like, "You wanna be that?" And I'm like, "Oh, God." I'm grateful, you know what I'm saying? But I also was like, "I better be careful what I start asking for and repeating or signing up for because
Yep,
it takes
exactly.
you through something." And, I mean, it's all worth it in the end. It is true, like, I laugh and I joke and I complain, but I tell people all the time that it's when we're going through valleys, it's when we feel like we're alone, when we feel like we know the least, right? And that we are the least, that we're on the path that we're supposed to be on and we're doing the things that we're supposed to do. And I'm like, I just know that that's one of those signs in my GPS that it's like, you're going the right direction. And this is why it feels tough, but keep moving along. And so some people are like, I panic during those times. And I think the exact opposite. I think that I'm doing everything wrong. And I'm like, I might walk and complain, but Imma keep going.
But I'm going to keep going. That is so true. And you are my first guest of 2025. And I want to give you your flowers. They're not physical flowers,
Yeah,
but they are flowers. It is appreciation, it is
yeah,
love for you, and it's a thank you.
yeah.
And
Thank
it's a
you.
thank you because my focus this season is breaking generational cycles is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's because I don't think people understand the magnitude of breaking generational cycles and what we
Mhm.
go through and the work that we have to put in and the
Yeah,
mindset and the continued focus and catching ourselves and then going back and doing
yeah,
the work, not for ourselves, but for all the people in our lives, the people in the world that we don't want to see go through the things that we go through.
yeah,
So I'm not just giving you your flowers because you were a teen mom and you became a successful CEO. You became a successful powerhouse woman. You have a beautiful heart and spirit. You rest in God. But I'm giving you your flowers because you chose to change the narrative.
yeah.
You chose
Wow.
not to allow what people would say or say about you to determine who you were going to become and the things that you were going to do,
Yeah,
the things that you were going to accomplish because you can.
yeah,
You gave other young girls and women hope that they can, and that children aren't burdens, but they're a blessing.
amen,
And then we
amen.
add to that blessing and we pour into that blessing.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you all these flowers because you deserve them. And
Wow.
you are exactly who God called you to be and more.
Wow.
And for being a
Woo.
phenomenal mother. So, you know, I like to be obedient and trust God with my
Yeah.
words and my steps. And I find that as women, but
Yeah.
in addition to women, Black women, we
Yeah.
don't give each other enough love and
Yeah.
praises and hope and enlightenment for who we are and the work that we continue to do. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, the work you continue to do, and the work you continue doing yourself. Because the work that you do in yourself, it shows me,
Yeah.
my daughter, and the other young girls
Yeah.
that they are powerful.
Wow.
So these flowers are a lifetime of flowers
Mm.
to say thank you and please keep pressing through, even when you feel like you're just tired and burnt out and nobody
Yeah.
understands and nobody stands with you. Understand that nobody needs to stand with you for you to know that you're doing
Yeah.
exactly what God wants you to do and that you're touching people's lives.
Yeah. Ooh. Talk about filling me up. I'm like, my eyes over here just like welling a little bit,
Yes.
but
And that's what I want flowers to really feel like. It's like filling you up. They're not
yeah.
flowers that will die, but flowers that you will carry with you and remember in your heart.
Yeah. Amen.
So
Ooh, thank you.
you're welcome. I love
Yes. I
you.
know, love you too. I really appreciate, that, and it is power in pouring, and coming from a person who pours so much, to just sit in it and hear and know that those words come from a deeper place and just a broader person than just the person that's obedient enough to say it is appreciated. I truly appreciate it.
So when I connected with you and I said breaking generational cycles, right?
Mhm.
We hear teen pregnancy, and right now, it's happening still. That cycle is still going. And breaking generational cycles is not just about stopping something,
Yeah.
it's about recreating.
Mhm.
So I want to ask, hey, I hope you're enjoying this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you. Where are you from? Where were you born? What was your family dynamic like? And Tye Threats, what do you represent?
Yeah, so I am from Chicago, Illinois, born and raised. And if anyone ever listens to this and they're from there, they're probably like, what side of town, right? Because every person from Chicago asks that. I was born on the south side of Chicago, and I come from a single parent household. So my mom had 9 children, and I was number three. And a lot of people kind of always thought I was the oldest. I was not. We come in groups of threes. I may have kind of took on that role a little bit, but um, that was kind of me. And we grew up poor. Um, Thankfully, what I've learned throughout the years is that we knew we were poor, and maybe not as poor as others, and I say that because someone gave me the perspective before, imagine being so poor and everyone around you is poor that you don't even know that you're poor. At least we knew that
Yeah,
we
right?
were poor, right? Which let us know that, the people around us and our circumstances, like, wasn't always all the same, but we grew up not always having enough. That whole I hate to hear people use the phrase rob Peter, pay Paul. We grew up with not always having the basic necessities like, lights, water, hot water, just different things like that. And even though it was a challenge, um, I always found a way to find joy in it. So I was always that sibling that's I'm gonna find a way to laugh, about what it is that's going on. But I was also smart. And even though we were poor, my mom did go out of her way to make sure that we were not in the neighborhood school, that she took us out of the
Mhm.
environments and planted us places. And I think because of that, that really opened my eyes at a young age to just know that there was more to this world and that everyone was not doing the same thing. And part of that was when I say I was smart, I went to and my sister like one of the top schools in the city. It was a magnet program. You had to be super smart to get in there in a lottery. But there they had a performing arts program. And that's where I got a chance to get into dance, which I used to pretend that I was doing ballet at home the entire time. But I really wasn't. I was just dancing by myself. But the opportunity presented itself there. And that's when I started getting into dance scholarships. And I would travel downtown to the affluent areas. And although I felt super out of place, there was moments where I was just daydreaming like, we could have this, right? But I was always one of those people where I'm like, we could my faith was always big, and I always was like, we can do this. And I come back and I, tell my mom, I was always the person that went first. We can do something different. We can, do this. And I would just boldly go. And before anybody could stop me, it's
You
like,
do
she's
it.
doing it, we better support her. And that kinda was, like, always, my role, in life kinda growing up, but that's pretty much my, background, not talking about the pregnancy and things, but when you say, what is it that what do I represent? Strength, resilience, and just I am a product of you are not your circumstances. You are only what it is that you imagine, and there is nothing in life that can stop you. My sister always says I have the "you can do it" ministry, and she's like, all I know is that I only have one older sister, but she's like, if she says that she can do it, you better move out the way because she's going to do it, and that's all she knows. And I will encourage anyone that I meet, you can do it. Whatever that thing is that you say that you can do it, right? I have made it through so many different things, even at young ages. You cannot convince me. I understand that there's a timing, to things, but that is the heart and core of who I am as a person.
You say that, and I'll ask you this question, but I've been asked this question myself, and I say, I don't know. I just developed it. I just had it. It's like it was embedded in me from birth.
Yeah,
Where would you say you got that mindset from and that drive? Like, despite being poor and, not having what every other, rich or well off child may have had.
yeah. I do believe that some people might just be born with it.
Yeah, I really
I
believe
do
so.
truly believe that. And I think that I am just naturally a very optimistic person. I'm a very spiritual person, even before I fully understood what that meant. And I think that when you feel like that, and you believe that, and you see something that you believe come to pass, it gives power to it. And too many times I've seen power come from something I believed that you couldn't convince me.
Right.
So after that, it was like, it's just embedded in me. I don't know where it came from. I just had it. But also because I've seen it nurtured and it actually happened, now no one is taking that, from me because I'm like, I've seen it happen. So I think I agree with you. Don't know where it came from. I think that just it was given to me, and the optimism and the fact that I have seen it happen before, which gave power to it. I just kept going from it, and I'm just like, I want everybody to have some of that.
Yeah. And I honestly, hearing you talk about your mom and her making sure you guys had the finest things, went to the best school, had the best education, I think a bit of that did come from her, unknowingly
Mm,
passed down to you. Um, and then it goes back to having such a mom like that. I can imagine how much strength she had and how she always encouraged you guys. So then somebody would be like, okay, well, so, generational cycle, and people love to say that teen children are bad. And
mhm.
they just don't want to listen. They're unruly, and they come up with all these things just to try to pinpoint why you were a teen mom.
Yeah.
With a mom like that, how did that come about, you becoming a teen mom?
While I mentioned before that parenting is new to all of us, And I actually don't care how many children you have, each child and the assignment that's on their life is different than the next. And I think as a parent, your commitment to die every day to give um, l- life, or I would just say direction to the soul that God put you over, is something that an unselfish person has to do. I do remember my mom sharing, with me, she was super disappointed, when she found out that I was pregnant. I'll never forget some of the things that she said. I mean, we live our lives independently, right? So we know that we're parents, we know that we're parenting, but we still want to do the things that, bring pleasure to ourselves, right? And live our
Mhm,
lives. But
mhm.
I do think that my mom, and I remember her mentioning that, well, I guess you can, what did she say? Like, children will do as you do, not as you say.
Right.
And so, she's like, and I guess this is a prime example, you know,
This is the
of that.
example.
This is a prime example of that. And so, I will share that over the years, I've learned to look at teen pregnancy differently. I do think that when trauma and things happen, that it takes a lot of work, and maybe just me being in therapy a lot, that really kind of made me realize. But for me, I was just like, "Well, was I just some type of horny teen that was out there just doing every single thing?" Like, I don't know. Some people are like, "Oh, if you come from a single parent home, that maybe people are looking for love in the wrong places and all this stuff." And I'm like, "My confidence was on 10. My security in myself was not that." But when I peel back the layers in my adult life and started doing the work, I'm like, when there is inappropriate things or molestation or rape for some people or whatever that comes into play, that plays a factor
Right.
in some things. And so I remember thinking about that, and it's just started tuning into the story of teens sometimes when they're pregnant. And you'd be surprised, it is not always about someone trying to fill a void or looking for love in the wrong places. It could be some experiences or exposures or things that has happened to them. And so owning that part, sometimes too, it's like you're not a bad person. You're in unlearning some of the things that people said about you. Oh, you're a fast girl, you were this, you were that. Well, look at her mom, or it doesn't surprise me, right? Like, all
Mhm.
these different
Yep.
things.
Mhm.
And while I get it, I also started to get it a little bit more and just kind of understand how some of those things come about. Despite my mom's anger at the time, I am such an optimistic person. I'm a words of affirmation person. If you even make me believe that I can do something, even if you're lying to me, if your heart and your intent at that moment was like, reached me in a certain way, that was all I heard, and I would take off. And I do remember her saying to me that she's like, after everything, that she says, "You know what? Well, you're gonna have the baby, and, you're going to, finish school early, and you're going to take care of this child. I'm not gonna do it, and, you're gonna be fine," or whatever it was that she said. I got her support in that moment, even though she didn't know how, but those words were important to me because I can remember a lot of things, that she, has said, and
Mhm.
love her to pieces. But, as I grew older, I'm like, my mom gives a lot of advice that maybe she might not follow, but her heart was in the right place.
Right.
Like,
The heart's
I
always in the
wasn't
right place.
Yes, I wasn't the child that picked it apart or judged it, I will say that. Like, I do have some siblings that may pick it apart or judge it. I wasn't the person that picked it apart or judged it. I just grabbed on to what made me feel good and what gave me hope, and I just ran with it, right? And so when she's like, "You are gonna do this," and I'm like, "You're right. I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
do
do
this."
it. I'm gonna do it.
So, I am grateful, for that, and I understand that that's gotta be hard as a parent. The first thing is that, um, me not having a teen like, any of my children are not teen parents, or not, like, at all. However, there anything that they do that is just like, "What were you thinking?"
Mhm.
You automatically feel this parental guilt as if you missed something, you did something wrong, you couldn't, even if you were giving your best. And imagine if you weren't even, or just not paying attention, to certain things. So I'm like, I can only imagine how it makes her feel like as a failure at that time, because even as a parent, I feel like a failure for way less. you know?
Yep.
Just like so just, I can see it from that perspective. In hindsight, I wouldn't change it for the world. And it's funny because I, by no circumstances, wanted any children. I absolutely love children, always have. You can probably always find me playing with the child growing up. Like, I will watch the kids, I will nurture the children. And so everyone naturally be like, "Hey, she'd be a great mom." No, I don't wanna
No.
be a mom, and I don't wanna be a mom for 2 reasons. I've always loved my career, I always knew I was going places, and I wanna focus on that, and selfishly, I do not want the responsibility that comes along with parenting, and it has nothing to do with changing diapers, it has nothing to do with, any of those things other than the thing that we're doing now, which is being responsible
Yeah.
for that soul, right? Which means that every day I have to ask God, what is it that this child needs, especially when they're going through their paths in life, right? It has to be more of him, less of me, right? The humbleness, the humility, all of these things that it take. And if I'm exhausted with 2 children, I think about this too. I don't even want to think about 9. It's just like I don't
So
want to
now you
think
know what your
about
mom was going through.
so I'm like and then when you have your own struggles, right? Because she was a teen mom too, so it's like you've got your own struggles, right? And while I have had the privilege of going through therapy and choosing that route and having the opportunity to pay for it, that's never been on her radar, her thoughts, or her financial level to do that, right? So I can only imagine because just the amount of work and commitment and things that it takes to break the generational curses. I mean, if we even just talk about therapy right now, there is a generation out there that just feels like you're not going to catch me doing that.
Yeah.
It's
And they're
like
so against it. The word
there's
it's like a curse word for them.
absolutely, right? And so imagine that, right? And so it's like while we can give our parents grace and say they've done the best that they can as we walk through their shoes and life experiences, we also know when it comes to breaking generational curses that that takes an open mind, right? That takes a commitment to wanting to see something different than choosing to do something that is either familiar or that you know that you're uncomfortable with. It also comes with the whole point of like, my children and children's children will go further than me. Because I look at it's a race in life, right? And so it's like I'm gonna accomplish so much during my stretch of that race, before I'm behind you, just kind of cheering you on as you kind of run the next stretch. And so, um, my mom did a lot. When I think about it, I'm like, you know what? She did a lot, like in her part, whether she lived it or not, it didn't matter. She did a lot and she covered a lot that gave us an opportunity to think about things and or dream bigger or whatever. It's amazing what your children learn from you when you're not even intentionally teaching it.
Right.
And so a lot of lessons we learned, and then now it's like, okay, how do we become better so that our next generation is not going, through those things? How do we foster the healthy relationships? What does a healthy parent-child relationship look like when the child then becomes the adult and have a mind of their own or a different type of calling that stretches the family in a different direction to move forward, right? And that could be that therapy example, right? Maybe we're like, hey, you'd be surprised some of the experiences that you've gone through when you were younger affects you in this type of way. Be open to therapy, right? It's like sometimes, they're not. And can we beat them over the head or make them go? Absolutely not. But we can, affect change in a different way. So there's a lot of things that I have done that maybe no one else has done. And maybe they all kind of looked at me certain ways or didn't agree at that time. But me taking that step truly helped my siblings. And I think an example of that is maybe 15 or 16 years ago, I think now. Nope, my son is 17. So, golly, like almost 18 years ago, I moved to Texas. I had never in my life been to Texas. I was scrolling on a computer one day and I had a pop-up come up on my screen. I didn't have pop-ups, and it was a map, and I love traveling, and I'm just always intrigued, and so I start clicking on the map. It was a real estate map, and I'm like, "Oh gosh, you get, like, triple the house in Texas for this price." And I was like, "I'm gonna move." I put my mind to it, And I mean, I've never shared this out loud. I did confess it to my siblings, like a few years ago when we were going through some healing things. But at that time, the dynamic in my house was my older sister had just had her first baby, which was and I was having my second child. I have 2 children. Her son and my son are 8 weeks apart. And, again, growing up in a large household, my mom created a system. The first 3 children was responsible to take care of the next 3 children. And then the next 3 children were supposed to be responsible for the last 3, but the middle 3 didn't always catch on right away, so the older ones was still taking care of that. So I make a joke, but I have, like, 2 children before my daughter. It's just like and
That's a true fact though.
yes.
If you're an older sibling, that's a true fact.
I do. So 2 of them, I'm like, my 2 are married, like I have 2 children before my daughter. So there was this system that my mom created. And so, um, growing up in it, you don't think anything about it, but having children in it, you realize that, hey, you do feel some type of way about it. And I say, hey, because I had my son when I was 23, almost 24. And, your brain is not fully developed until you're 25. So a lot of things happen between these first
Yeah.
2 children at 16 and 23. Well, when we would go to work, again, in the ecosystem is what I'm going to call it. It's like, oh, yeah, I'll watch your kid. But mom watching our kid meant that everyone else was going to watch the kid in the ecosystem in the
Yeah.
house, right? So
Yeah.
it's whoever needs a bottle, you give them a bottle. Whoever needs this, you give them that. Like, it was very systematic. No problem. But it became a problem one day when I came home and my nephew, who is the same age as my son, my son was very quiet. And my nephew was very active, which is polar opposites of me and my sister's personality, right? Like you would think that my kid was her kid and her rambunctious kid was mine.
Right.
It's like, but my daughter at that time was 7 years old, and she wanted to play with her brother, and she's just playing with her brother because that's her brother, and she's just sibling bonding, but in the ecosystem, the kids were being watched. And so my nephew might have been being fussy or needed something, and I remember my mom saying to my daughter, "Help, like, give him this or something," and I saw my younger sister giving the baby whatever the baby needed. But she was insistent, like, "You need to pay attention to, like, what needs to be done, like, he needs this," and she's like, "I'm just bonding with my brother." And I was like, "Mm-mm, I'm not raising my children in this ecosystem where they don't even know that they're siblings because they are so programmed to do what's needed in that moment." Like, no, we need if you have 3 hands from my last 3 siblings to play with this one and my son is settled and she's bonding with her brother, I just didn't feel that you should have been pulling her away from that. But the way in which, it was thought of, I'm sure, and maybe she might not even remember this, but the bottom line was that it happened and I didn't like it. And I went upstairs to my room and I said, "I'm leaving. I got to get out of here. I want my children to know that they're siblings. I want to raise my family the way I want to raise them. I don't want how we grew up to be how they grow up because this is the atmosphere." And I started looking for places in Texas. I was like, I started searching. And so back then, MySpace was out, and I put on there, I'm moving to Texas. And I put a picture of a house there. And then one of my friends reached out that I went to college with, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're moving to Texas?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I said, "Well, I'm looking into it." And I explained to her, what, and she was military, her and her husband at the time, and my ex-husband was military. So I wanted to stay somewhere where the benefits were close. So
Yeah.
she's like, "Hey, our insurance company is hiring here. They'll pay for you to go back to school." She tells me all these things. And then boom, what did I do? This is possible. I start searching up apartments. And I'm like written sight unseen. I'm like, "Can you go pick up the keys? Can you do this?" I'm at work and I'm just working all the hours, packing because me and my children are leaving. And so my mom, she always wanted us close. She's just always wanted us like close where we can help, build one another. And it's just like,
Yeah.
hey, you can um I didn't agree. None of us did, but that wasn't the point. And so She just was okay with it at that time, and whatever was going on in her life, she just was not really paying attention, and she was just like, "Hey, that's great," right? So me, I knew how we grew up. I'm like, I'm taking that window of time to get out of here while I have the grace and not her being very strong-willed and powerful and keeping me from going. And so, sure enough, I lined up my job. I was not going to get there in enough time. They said, "Call me when you get here." I decided I was going to do a temp agency. Until then, I looked up everything. I got my apartment sight unseen. I had my friend go and pick up my keys. I packed up my car with everything that I could. I put my 7-year-old and I think he was like 4 or 5 months at the time, and my 23-year-old self in the car. And my daughter to this day would tell you every time she hears Fred Hammond's song, "No Weapon Formed Against Me Shall Prosper," that she says, "I remember you played that song just crying all the way down the road." She's like, "I was supposed to be asleep, but I saw you." And
I was
I'm
supposed
just
to be
like,
asleep, but I saw you.
"I was supposed to be asleep, but I saw you." And I did, and I went to Texas and, you know, it was the first what was it, like October when I got here to February was hard. Everything, like my car was giving me troubles, babysitting, like all of these things, it was hard. And I did not know how I was gonna do it. And my mom said to me on the phone, I would call her and I'm just, "Mom, this is happening, whatever." And she said to me, I will never forget, I was walking to check the mail, and she said, "Well, T, if it doesn't work, just come back home." When I tell you, I was like, "Stand up." I was just like, "You are going to figure it out because this is why you're here." And when I tell you that I never went back, and it instantly got better. And I was just like, "You know what? The job I was supposed to work at ended up calling." Everything started falling into I just started doing what I needed to do. Years later, years later, I'm having a discussion with my family about a secret that I learned about concerning me. And as I'm talking to my family, and they're giving me the bits and pieces of what they knew, because apparently a lot of people knew, and maybe I may share it if you ask what it is, but my
Share
brother
it.
said to me, I share that next. My brother said to me, "I was really upset that you got up and you left." And I just thought that that was mean of you, to leave. And I didn't like how mom didn't say anything to you, but she always said stuff to, whatever. And I told him, I said, "I ran." I almost wanna cry. I I ran, and I said, "I left because I wanted to raise my children and take care of them, but me doing that helped my siblings leave. Every last one of them are successful in their own right. On anyone else to take care of them. They understand life differently. And, while I may be degreed up and super ambitious in a way that the world may look at me instantly and say, 'Oh, she's successful,' they will quickly tell you, I do not judge people. I believe success is your own right. And I feel that people should have that freedom to walk in their own calling. And I did that not just for me and my siblings, but I did it for them. And when I look at them, I'm appreciative that my brother and my siblings, they will tell me, they're like, "I wanna give you your flowers while you're here." And I appreciate the words that they fill me up with because that was tough. That was tough to break away from something that we knew. It was dysfunctional. It was. It wasn't as terrible as some other people, but it was dysfunctional. And I did not wanna raise my children like that, and I'm proud of every last one of them, and I appreciate that we can share those types of things with each other. And I'm like, I didn't do it because I didn't like you. I didn't do it because I abandoned you all. I didn't do it because I felt I was better than you all. They see and understand the work. But when I look at every last one of them now, that's not how we grew up. And they will tell you, you were the one that got up and just started leaving and doing things and showing us that it could be done. If my siblings tell me like I can't do something, let me help you explain your escape. Let's go because we're not going to live life fearful of what can happen. We're going to keep marching forward. And so I will encourage any and every last one of them with everything that's in me, move forward. And so I just yes, I left, and they know that, but I had to do it in order to help break the cycle. We all had a part in helping break it, but they were just like, "How did you get away?" I laugh because I've helped some of my siblings escape. Like, I've helped some of them escape, but just those transparent conversations that we've had as siblings, and just to see how my siblings viewed me in some things, like, um, it hurts sometimes that it's like, wow, that you thought that, but they understand why, and we've all made different choices, for different things to help break cycles, but I did. I left and I never came back, and I will tell my siblings all the time, "Wherever you feel like you wanna go, go, and if it doesn't work, you can always come back, or you can if you feel God calling you to" what is in Texas? I don't know anybody in Texas. I mean, they've all moved to some part of Texas now. A few of them have lived in different places, and, but I just got up and I left, but even my oldest, child that, she sees a lot. She sees a lot, and she's like, "I see the difference," just in things, and so I just I am grateful, but that was some tough moments, and to do that all before 25 years old, and I say that because my brain is not developed. I am still raising children that are under the age of 25, and I'm like, I was like, I don't know, like, it's just
Yeah.
like I see the struggle in trying to put things, together, and even with that hindrance, that commitment to just create a different life for them, I don't want them to know that. That's not the lifestyle that I want. I don't want them to not know who their siblings are. I don't want them raised in this system where it's like whoever needs, what, I want you to know who your siblings are. I don't want you to have worries about what are we gonna eat? Is the bills paid? Why is the lights out? Why, it's this
Yeah.
one time my son said to my younger sister, my baby sister is 5 years older than my daughter. And so he said to her one day, he says, "Oh, my favorite movie growing up was Tomorrow." And he meant Annie. And he said, "I just really loved it. I just remember," and he's giving her this memory and he's so happy telling her. And my sister got emotional. She said, "Oh my God, I was so stressed at 15 years old. I had to watch you guys because I would bring them there in the summertime." And she said, "We didn't have cable, we didn't have any I was just trying to make it memorable for you, and that's the only DVD we had to play." She's like, as a 15-year-old, she's stressed. She's like, I'm responsible, for this while my mom is gone because they were with my mom, but in the ecosystem, whoever is there watches them, So my poor 15-year-old sister, or maybe she was 14, 13 or 14 at the time, and she's stressed out trying to keep kids entertained that's here visiting for the summer in Texas, and they were only there because I was making more money to be able to afford daycare in the summertime was $2,000 a month, for 2 kids. I didn't have it, So, my mom was like, "Bring them here, I'll watch them," and they were watched, that's all I'll say. Um, and so, um, but that was stressful to her, and so for her to hear that and get out how she felt, but learn that it was like a core sweet memory for him, it's just like that I'm sure that had to be healing for her because
Yeah.
I had no clue that was going on, and how long she bottled that up, but
You touch something, and this is why I said breaking generational cycles is a lifestyle, because we don't even realize that generational cycles doesn't mean that it's toxic,
yeah.
and it doesn't mean trauma, right? So you talked about getting away from the ecosystem, and a lot of kids are going through it now. Instead of them being children,
Mhm.
it's like they're being parents, right? It's like a passed down generation. Okay, well, I have the kids now. You have to watch them. You have to babysit them. You got to prepare dinner. You got to do this. You got to do that for your own sibling. That you don't even have the time to bond with your sibling, get to
Yeah,
know your sibling, eat dinner together, go to bed like children should be going to bed rather than preparing your own sibling to go to bed, right?
yeah,
And I don't think we realize that generational ecosystem that you talk about
yeah.
has caused a rift between siblings where they don't even know each other.
It's true, and we are extremely grateful because we are very, very close, and I have seen resentment come out of people in those situations. So, it's like my older sister, my brother, he would work, sometimes or he would have to get away because it was tough for him. He was the only boy for 18 years and he has
Mhm.
6 siblings and a single mom who had a lot of hurt of her own from men, and that was tough. Like, in hindsight, when you grow up with your adult eyes and you look and you're like, "That was tough?" And so me and my older sister was at home a lot, and my older sister would just she can't do hair and she doesn't wanna deal with the homework, but she is such a phenomenal cook. And I mean, even to this day, I'm always like, "I don't care what your special recipe is." My sister can taste it and pick it apart, like, um, but she would do the dinner, and she was like, "Okay, I'll go clean the kitchen, I'll make the dinner," and then I'm like, "Okay, I'll wash the clothes," like, we'll both be washing the clothes together, and then I will go to the 3 girls under us, and I would comb their hair, I would help with their homework, I would play with them, and so I was just very connected, like, I was big sister mom to them. It's like, "Don't mess with my siblings. If you run home from school and someone's doing something and I'm the one that's at home, I'm gonna come down down the
Yep.
street, like, do not bother my siblings," and I didn't allow them to fight each other. I will put them in order in a moment, and it's like you know, we were just very to this day, very close, like, we talk every day in a group chat. Like, it's just, like, very loud when we all get together, but we're the best, of friends, and I'm grateful that resentment didn't come from that because it could have.
Yeah.
Not only did we have to watch each other, but even when it came to children, even if we didn't wanna say yes or no to watching each other's children, they were dumped in the house if mom agreed that she was gonna watch them.
Mhm.
It was
So
just
you
like
automatically had to watch them, yeah.
and so the resentment that could come, from those things, I'm just grateful that, like, we don't have that. I mean, we always laugh sometimes, we say we're trauma bonding or processing, but we are still friends and we support and uplift one another, and that's not everybody's, story. There's a lot of resentment sometimes from feeling like they lost out on life from having to do these things or be so responsible. Um, I knew way too much
Mhm.
as a child. Um, I don't even think I didn't have a childhood when I think about it. It was stressful. Why do I know what a child support check looks like? Why do I know the amount of every bill that needs to be paid? Why am I responsible for helping pay, the bills in the household? Why is it a we problem?
Yeah.
And I don't say that in a mean way, but I say that now that a lot of our childhood was
Yeah.
heightened emotional, like, awareness of just everything that
Yeah.
was going around, and so I tell my older sister who, she has 5 children, and, I tell her all the time, "I know that you're a single mom now, but your children are still allowed to be children. Give
Yes.
yourself a pat on the back for that. I know it may not be hard, but she has a support system. When I say support system, moms need it. And I always wonder, like, did my mom not have an outlet? I'm not I'm not sure, but we call
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
We call each other, and it doesn't mean that the other person may provide the bail money or the rescue for the situation, but we have each other to have adult-like conversations and to say, "Hey, here are some things that we can do," or that you can do to make the situation better. We step in for one another. Sometimes I'll hear my sister trying to figure out something, and I'll get off the phone, and I'll look at my husband like, "We're buying their kids uniforms," like,
Yeah.
that's what we're gonna do.
That's what a
And
support system is. It's not, I said that this morning to somebody. A support system is not just showing up when something is wrong.
yeah,
Support system is there as an outlet when we need advice.
absolutely.
Check
And
us.
that support system helps her not blind her kids, but protect their childhood safety. And it's
Mhm.
so many adults, like, I was talking to one of my, friends, today. We both have businesses, and she was saying how she was just I'm an anxious attachment style and how everything was spiraling. And I just took a moment to pour into her, but also identify with her. And I was sharing, hey, that's my same, attachment style too. And this is why. I said, I remember being younger that, my mom, my two older siblings went to school before I did, obviously. And she'd say, okay, it's time to take a nap. And I would say, okay, but if I go to sleep, are you going to wake me up to go pick them up? Because she would leave and go get them. And it would scare me for some reason. I knew she was
Yeah.
coming back. And she'd say, yeah, no, 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 I'm going to wake you up. And every time I woke up, she was not there. And I would cry my eyes out, just staring in the window, just pulling tissue from the bathroom, just like a whole line. I'm just
Oh,
crying. And the radio would be on. And I remember that, it would play the same lineup all the time. So when Michael Jackson Man in the Mirror was coming on, timed perfectly, they would always be getting ready to come down the street and I would see them. She'd be like, why did you cry? I'm coming back. And she thought it was funny. And and who knows, maybe it was funny all of our life until I became old enough to understand the impact. And so that used to freak me out. And then when my younger sister, I'm 4 years older than her, when she was born, we lived in Illinois. It gets 4 seasons. My mom would take the 2 older kids to school, and I would stay home, and she would tell me, "Do not answer the door. Just sit right here in front of Sesame Street. Your sister has a bottle. If you hear anything, then do this." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah," like, I'm taking it all in nervous. I'm like, "Oh my god," like, "I hope the baby doesn't move. I hope nobody comes and get us." Like, that was terrifying,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
for a young child. I was always left at school. Like, if school was out at 6 o'clock when I was in pre-K, the janitors were turning lights off. Like, it was just like,
Oh,
"Where's my mom?" And she'd be
yeah.
like, "See, I always come." I don't know, what she had to go through at that time, but all I know is that that left me very anxious in life. And so I was sharing that with her, and she starts crying. My friend starts crying, and she says, "My mom used to leave me in the car when they were going to the gas station, and I always felt like someone was gonna get me, and if they did, what was my plan of attack?" I was just so little, and my brain was just going and in this mode, and that plays a role sometimes. Like, why did I used to wake up and I'm like, if my husband gets up in the middle of the night, even to go to the bathroom when we were in our early stages of marriage, I'm like, "Where did you go? Why did you leave?" He's like, "What in the world makes you think I left in the middle of the night?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
or if I'm getting ready to go to sleep, even if my siblings were visiting, I'm like, "Oh, sit right here so that I can go to sleep." Like, and they're just like, "What?" But it plays a role, in some of those things, and so for us, it's like, we can't be responsible for everything because I do believe to a certain extent, all things not to a certain extent, all things good and bad work out to the good of them that love the Lord and that's called according to their
Amen.
purpose. And sometimes who we are and what our calling and purpose is in life, these experiences cannot be protected. It is
True.
not intended to break you, but it's intended to build you, right? And so it didn't kill me, like, but the awareness of it makes you realize the importance of breaking certain things. I don't wanna be a parent that is not a person of my word. Even something as simple as, saying that I'm going to wake you up before I leave. You're like, whatever. Like I don't want to be that person, right? Because I start thinking about what impact is that going to have later on. Now, again, I can't be responsible for all things, but when you talk about breaking generational curses, when we know better, we do better.
Yep.
And so it's just funny how a lot of little moments become big things. And when you don't know, you could also become very insensitive. Like I was left all the time when I was young and put that on your kid. Like, where it's just like, well, who cares? Like these kids are not this or
It's a
that. And
selfish. It's a selfish thing.
absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yes.
you
And
said something before. You said about running and about leaving and the siblings
mhm.
feeling like you left. And the reason why I got teary eyed is, wait, are you the middle child?
No, I I am number 3 of 9.
Number 3 of 9. You did say that. So I think about my own situation, and the moment I was about to turn 19 the night before, I ran.
Wow.
And I always told my mom, I used to say to her, when I turn 19, I'm leaving and I'm never going to turn back.
Wow.
And, you know, you talked about a pivotal moment when your siblings told you you left. You left them behind. And I remember my younger sister saying that to me. And she broke down crying. And I never realized how much me leaving had an impact on both my brother and my sister.
Yeah.
Because when my sister came around, I became the babysitter. I became the nurturer for my younger sister. Now my older brother could go out to parties and do all these cool things that I wasn't allowed to do.
Yeah.
And that babysitter, that person that he had that would be there to release him and relieve him so he can go be a kid, was
Yeah.
gone. And then my sister had to now bear the burden of everything else, listening to the arguments, the fights, and not having me there to protect
Yeah.
her. So when she said it, I was like, oh my gosh. But then I realized that they admire me.
Yeah.
And because I did that, he gave them the strength to know that they can break away from these generational cycles. So people have to realize that when you're breaking generational cycles, you're going to have to do things that you don't want to do, things that are painful.
Yeah.
You're going to have to say no. You're going to have to separate yourself from sometimes maybe your siblings just so
Yeah.
that you can do what you need to do. And your parents.
Absolutely.
So breaking generational cycles comes with a lot of things.
It
And it's a
does.
heavy burden to carry. It's a
It
cross
is.
that we have to carry. So when you're the chosen one, it's not going to be easy.
No. It's never easy when you're the first one, the chosen one. You know, I'm grateful for the conversations that you just mentioned with your siblings, because when the unintended impact impacts your core safety net, which was always my siblings, we all knew what it felt like. Um, but to be able to even go back and have mature conversations and apologize,
Right.
you know, and sometimes, my therapist shared this with me too, that even with sibling relationships, when something, could happen in your adult life, being able to hear their perspective, and how they felt then, and even apologize, because sometimes they need that, and sometimes we need that, too. We do a lot of things in life that we don't intend on, doing it has unintended consequences. But you wanna know something? I don't ever remember hearing the word "I'm sorry" growing up. That is not something that was taught or
Yes.
said, like, in our household, and I get it. As a parent, you know, wanting to kinda keep the order, sometimes or whatever, but being able to say, like, I'm sorry, or be wrong about, some things, or not know, really is has a big effect. And I even think breaking the generational curse is there. And I'm by no means saying that, like, I get that there's order that you have to keep, in your house, but um those are just things that you just didn't hear.
Keeping the order also means respecting the order.
Mhm.
So, this whole thing about keeping the order and children must respect their parents, and, there's certain things that kids shouldn't say, there's certain kids should stay in a kid's place. If we want our kids to respect us and respect that order
Yeah.
and keep it, we gotta be the bigger person and apologize when we're wrong. And
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
my son, sometimes he'll be like, "Mom, you're reminding me of grandma." And I have to catch myself and be like, "Lord, my son, where's that for?" But
I have this thing. I get PTSD from the word disrespect. I remember being told that I was disrespectful anytime I had an opinion that differed or challenged what, you know, my mom wanted.
Mhm.
And I'm not even talking about as a kid. I'm talking about in my 30s.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. Or the scripture in the Bible, oh, it took me a moment to even go back to dare look at it, where it's like, the Bible says, children, obey your parents, that your days may be long. And I'm like, and then the next verse says, parents, don't provoke your children to wrath. And I just want us to all be accountable. I want us to all be accountable. In my household, um, yes, like, we should obey absolutely our parents. That is absolutely why God gave you parents, because he knew that you couldn't navigate the early parts of your life by yourself.
Right.
But I don't stop being your parent when you become a legal adult, but I do tell my children that it kind of enters into a mentorship type relationship. I used to be very fragile and like, oh my God, what if my, kids don't like me when they grow older because of the fragile relationship, that I had with my mom. And I remember telling my daughter at 21 that I told her, I said, hey, you need to worry about if I'm going to like you. Yeah, it's respect is a two-way street.
Yep.
And she looked at me and I'm like, I have given you everything that I was supposed to, legally by law and more, in love, but that does not give you the right to abuse a two-way street. And I'm like, so you need to start asking yourself if my mom's gonna like me. And I'm like, because that goes, both ways, right? And we have a really good relationship, but I did hear that you can't really say if your relationship with your child is good until in their 30s if they're still calling you.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet.
That's true. That
So I
is
don't
true.
know.
I heard that too.
But I really had some trauma associated with that word.
Yeah.
And when we talk about being a person that does what they say they're going to do, I'm not holding a magnifying glass to that. But there were times when the same thing that I was praised for, I was persecuted for.
Yep.
So in one moment, when it benefited everyone in the ecosystem, you're praised for it. But the moment that you don't act accordingly, you're persecuted for it. And it doesn't matter if they agree, that's my story, that's my truth. And that's what I struggle with and I went through. And when I say that, it's like I started learning. I remember when I was 24, or maybe I was 25. I was at a tough space. I needed to go full time and not work like this 32-hour thing. Daycare was so much rent, all these things. And I was like one day late in my rent and they put a note on my door. And I was just like, well, one day outside the grace period. And so I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do." And I only had so much money. I'm 25 years old. I'm a single mom. I'm trying to figure out. And I remember telling God, I said, "God, if you bring me out of this, I will never be here again. I will be responsible. I will be this, I will be that." Now, I was never taught financial literacy, but I've always loved everything about finances and that's my background. But when I tell you the very next day I woke up, this was the first time that I had got a full bonus from my job because I had worked there before and, it wasn't a full year. So I didn't really know what that meant. Thousands of dollars. And that probably was my I don't know, last large income tax I'd ever had anyway. When it came in, I instantly started putting up money and saving. I always would save a little bit, but when you have greater responsibilities, that little bit is not enough.
You're right.
And I gave myself a good jump start and I just made sure that I just changed the way I thought. I'm going to live by this principle. I'm going to put this away. I'm going to do that. I made sure, and so it looked like I had things. No matter how little or whatever, it looked like I had things. Like, oh, T's just living a great life. She's taking vacation. She's doing what she wants to do, whatever. But you don't understand. In order to take vacation, the savings has to be into place. I have to be able to do all these different things. So whenever someone would run into a trouble, my mom would reach out and she'd say, "You need to help your sister. You need to help your brother. You need to do this." Well, if my sibling asked, I would be like, "Well, I don't know. I don't have it." And they'll be like, "Okay." But if mom picked up the phone and she was like, "Hey, she wasn't asking, you were being told." And everyone's just afraid to say no, at least then. I think we're all at a different point now.
Yeah.
And I would be given things I didn't have. I would be given things that I couldn't afford to give, because I tell people all the time, like, if I give you everything I have and I'm the bank, who is going to bail me out if something, happens? We have to live responsibly. And I learned that some of my siblings didn't know. They were like, "Well, I didn't know that she asked you. I thought that I would have never accepted it if I was going to still end up being evicted after that." Like, like I knew I didn't have it. Like I had to let life run its course.
Mhm.
And for me, it was, like that was a tough thing. And I'm just like, one person's salary isn't intended to take care of every person. We have to live responsibly. I look at my grandmother and I admire her so greatly. She has She doesn't do much, but she takes care of every single thing that she's always needed to. She just lives within her means. And
Yeah.
I was like, that's the thing that we're missing is just living in our means. And having to walk in that, but really get the stink eye, you know, of like, she doesn't wanna help her family, she'd watch her family struggle. Like,
Mhm.
that that's not true, or to say that to certain siblings, like, and it's just like, "Well, I was just told that you didn't wanna help me and or that you didn't want us here," and I'm just like, "That's not what happened." Like, um, so it's been those are the generational curses. It gets messy, and you're right. It doesn't have to be terrible or newsworthy or so traumatic or just this terrible thing, but it's a lot of mindsets and you know lack or passed down things. I don't know that that was passed down from my grandmother, but I don't know. Like I don't know the whole story, but I just know that changing that narrative and having to be the first person and having to give your siblings permission to know, like, we can ask it. My siblings can ask me anything because I can tell them no if I can't.
Right.
And you don't always have to come to me for everything, ask another one. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and so we've just come a long ways in that, but it wasn't modeled for us. It wasn't demonstrated. I might have been the villain or the first victim, like of that. But I look at where we are now and I'm just like, living in our means, standing on our own. There are still struggles from time to time, but supporting one another, knowing that support doesn't mean rescue, all the time. And that's the difference. And most importantly, we're teaching all of our children a different dynamic. And we're making that generation just as close where we may not have had that, growing up, with our cousins, but helping to kind of bring that healthy dynamic into play has been just amazing.
I agree. And you know that generation of obligation.
Yeah.
You just talked about it all together where we feel obligated to say yes. And the moment we say no, we are the villain.
Mhm.
It's also teaching ourselves that it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
And that doesn't break the relationship. And our children, siblings, okay, you asked your sibling for help. Maybe they can't help you right now.
Mhm.
That shouldn't cause a dent in the relationship or
Yeah.
cause any malice or any friction. Just understanding
Yeah.
that people are allowed to say no and not be not hold that against them, right? So
Yeah.
what was that moment in your life that made you realize that you can change your story?
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.
And that you had big things ahead of you and you were going to fulfill it.
There were a lot of moments, but maybe the biggest, most pivotal moment was leaving.
Mhm.
Because you almost can say, yeah, you were bold and you accomplished a lot of things there, opening a business, having a whole location, and just doing crazy stuff that nobody ever did before, right? It's like that was bold, but it was even bolder to pack your 2 children up and drive 1,200 miles to a place that you never been to because you want it better. And even when things were terrible and you didn't know how you were gonna make it through, not running back to what you knew, but staying in it and choosing to make your way through. I think there were many moments beforehand that maybe gave me the courage to do something like that because remember, like I say, when you just believe you can do anything, right? And then all of a sudden you just do one thing, you're like, "Oh, I can probably do even more," right? But I'm already here. You broke away. You came here to do what you intended to do. You never knew this place and everything worked out in order for you to get here. So what are you missing? What is that peace? What is that faith? It was a year after living in almost a year. So I moved to Texas in October of 2007. I met my husband in December of 2008. I wasn't going to meet him in Illinois. And that obedience and staying, even when it was tough, was greater than any sacrifice I could have ever offered. Right. And so I just, I look at some of those things in those moments. It's like if you didn't break away, you would have never even, it's like God says, I have something for you on the other side, but do you trust me? And, sometimes what it takes to make us step out on faith is not what sustains us.
Mhm.
And so what it took for me to step out on faith and like, okay, wow, you can get more house in Texas. Okay, I'm going to move to Texas. So somebody reaches out, girl, you should apply to this company. The company's like, I want to hire you. And I'm like, great, I'm going to stack my checks. I'm going to get this. And then all of a sudden, boom, I'm here. And then everything starts crumbling. And I'm like, oh, but I really thought it was going to be this. Hey, the faith that it took for you to get there is not what's going to sustain you. You got to go deeper. You have to use those moments to say, hey, there's more here. And when I started being committed to navigating through that, because it was my children that gave me the strength to do a lot of things, right? And so for me, I'm like, I'm not taking them back to that. I have gotten us out of it. This has to work. What am I missing? What am I missing? What do I need to do? God, like I'm here, I'm listening, I'm seeking him. Like I'm just like every day, he's probably tired of me, right? And I'm just like, what do I do? Because I know you didn't bring me here just to make me have to turn back around. In that moment, it makes me stronger every single time. And then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, like life gets better, you know. Then I met my husband and I'm like, yeah, I wasn't gonna meet him there. And it's funny because I'm from Illinois, my husband's from Wisconsin. We
Mhm.
meet in Texas. It's just
What are
like,
the odds, right?
what are you doing here, right? So I just thought that that was like, hilarious within itself. But um it's and then those moments just keep building. There's more and more moments in my life, but those moments keep building. But it was just kind of, being I can do anything. If I can survive at 24 years old with 2 children in a place that I knew no one, I can do anything. I have survived other things that I won't even talk about that I don't even know how. Of almost, being abducted before and things like if you can survive those things, you need to dig within yourself and you can survive anything. And I think that reminding yourself of those moments, right? I mean, now I'm at the point sometimes I go through things that the only thing I can anchor back to is I'm still here.
You're still
Maybe
standing.
I've never been through anything like this, but I'm still here. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like I got to a point where I'm like, God, if I wake up in the morning, my eyes open, I'm gonna be brave. Like, I'm
Right?
just like, I'm gonna be brave because you're like, I'm not done. But
Yeah.
that really was a pivotal moment for me and my children. And I'm grateful looking at them, looking at the life that they have. And when I say the life that they have, it's not monetary or financial. I look at the relationship that they have. I look at the freedom that they have to focus on just their problems and not our problems.
Right.
Um, they have the right to be children, and then also just how much more we flourished and they flourished as a family as I continue to commit to going through therapy and kind of untangling the parts that was maybe not modeled to me that was different, um, that I needed in order to provide a different experience for them. And I know they'll change more things too as they go on, but um, and that's to be expected. I want them to, right? It's like, go
Yeah.
be better, make greater generations, like, for us. But um, I just think that Texas move, might have been like that whole girl, if you can stand in this,
Yeah.
you
You were
can
you
stand it.
you were the centerpiece, and girl, you couldn't have thought that God was just gonna move you and make life easy for you.
Listen, I was
There.
too young to even know, young and naive. I was like, he said go.
I used to be like, God, why me? I don't do nobody nothing. Come on, why? Why? There's a reason why. Now I'm smiling back like, All right, that's why I had to go through that.
I
But
used to say that all the time, and my grandmother, when she was battling cancer, um, she told me, she said, "You know, it's so easy for us to say, 'Why me?'" She said, "But I always hear God whisper back and say, 'Why not?'"
yeah,
And I'm like, "Hmm." So I started approaching things differently, but yeah, I shouted, "Why me?" all the time, right? And it's like, but then God said, "But remember the pick me moment, remember the I'll go moment, remember the I'll say yes moment." Now you're complaining.
right now you
Now you don't want it.
right now you don't want it. So you teen mom, breaking generational cycles, running for yourself and your family, not just your immediate family, but your entire family, because you were the centerpiece and you're still the centerpiece. And then you dominated. You became a founder and CEO of WTV Consulting.
Yes, ma'am.
Girl, you did things that most people would say that teenage girls could never do with a child, and then adding a second one. Most people now, they write off teenage moms.
Mhm.
They try to tell us what we're going to become,
Yeah.
and that there's no way you're going to be able to go through school, open a business, be successful. No man's going to want you with a child. You got
Get along
baggage,
too.
right? Let alone two. But you are a successful founder and CEO, successful mother of two, a wife.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. What was your journey to starting this company, and what is it about?